diving deep into deep conversations here with Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. I'm your host, Sean Kneese, or Sean K, or however you want to call me. And today my guest is Melanie Flores. She's a Reiki practitioner. She's an entrepreneur. She's an artist. She does all kinds of cool stuff. And she's here to tell us more about... We met at Prototype 237, which is like an event for like artists and like other people interested in spirituality.
Right, and creatives and people who just want to dive more deeper into themselves. So, they had a couple of workshops for, meditation and breath work. And we also had like a talk, like a speaker who spoke about like consciousness.
Oh yeah, my friend Eric Sanchez, he spoke there too. Shout out to him too.
Yes, he was amazing. I loved his speech. And our style pretty much like introduced ourselves.
Yeah, because we both had like the hat, the newsy hat, and like the hats spoke to each other, like the same hat. Right. It's like the hats understand each other. It's like they got this like
they got
like,
the call.
Yeah, they got the call. It's like yeah.
So that was really cool. I really did like your hat.
Oh yeah, yeah. I got a whole collection of like these different kinds of like hats, like different newsy hats.
Beautiful.
Like, yeah.
But, a little bit about myself. I'm a Reiki practitioner, an artist, and an entrepreneur. I've been doing Reiki for 5 to 6 years now. But before diving into my Reiki timeline, I want to just talk about where I was before then. So I grew up in North Jersey. I went to high school in Bergen County and then decided to go to NJCU for some time. I studied a semester there until...
NJCU, is that like a community college or what was
it's a university in Jersey City.
Oh, okay.
And I did a semester there. I wanted to just test out how the college life was. And then I just, to be honest, I actually started going to counseling there because I just had a lot of things going on at home and I didn't know how to speak about them like with my family. So I just decided to try out counseling in college, and I spoke to her about my goals and what I wanted to do in the campus. But I initially told her that I wanted to travel to just be outside of home for a while. So I told her that I want to transfer to an art school. And, she was helping me do research on, like, some colleges that will, like, accept my GPA and, where my studies were at that time. So I went to Philadelphia. So I went there. I did an essay to, like, get into the college. And from then it was... like art school for like 2 years. So I did photography and culinary at the Art Institute of Philadelphia. And then my experience there was really, really opening. I opened a lot more to myself and like what I thought I knew, but it opened me up to like all the other doors that I was trying to open, but I couldn't because my environment wasn't helping me open. Until I told my mom, I told her everything that I did. I told her my plan, and whether she agreed with it or not, I did it. And it was because my soul was just calling me to be by myself.
So you feel like your family like didn't support you being creative as much or being an individual as much, and you felt like when you went to art school that kind of helped you explore that more?
Yes. Yeah, because that's what they didn't do at the time. They didn't support my creativity or just like who I was because there was a traumatic event that occurred for a couple of years and I wasn't heard for it. So it led me to a lot of like self-resilient, like, just being silent pretty much. And I didn't have a creative throughout high school. I was mainly an athlete, and until I got into art school, my mom and I had some space, and my whole family and I had space, so I really had a chance to like just dive into like what like my art like that I haven't done before then.
So you feel like you mentioned this traumatic event. Like, did your family not listen to what happened, or like they denied what happened? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they did listen, but they denied it. And from what they denied, it had me like question myself. Like, why are they denying this experience that I had? So I had like a lot of my mental.
It was abuse from a family member, or?
Yes, it was like just physical abuse, and like being like violated. So it was a lot of battles like in my mind, and I had a lot of battling like with love and like how I expressed that to my family, because I was denied and unheard.
That seems to be a common thing with abuse. I don't know if it's people try to block it out, because my father, like, he had a very negative experience with his dad. His dad like tried to dominate him, and like my dad didn't fit his image, and my dad always said that like other people in his family like didn't recognize what happened, like they kind of denied what happened,
Right.
and that seems to be a common thing, that like when people are abused or like they go through trauma, like other people, members of the family, don't acknowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like they wanted to just move on after that? Like they didn't want to process what happened, or like what they.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's just like easier. Like I can't speak for, because like but like I think maybe sometimes people like that's a way to, like they deny what happened, so it's like a way
It's like
yeah.
a coping thing. Yeah, I can understand that, and yeah, I definitely feel like that could be like generational, too, because coming from like, a long time ago when like I feel like no one really knew what abuse was, like how to explain that, because when you're killing an animal, right? Like a deer or a chicken, you're doing it because you want to feed your family. And it's like, do you see what you just did as abuse, or do you see it as love? Does that make sense?
In a sense, but like I guess like the abuse, like there's no way it's supporting the family or anything. It's just like so like I'm trying to understand, like, so you're saying like
how abuse wasn't seen like back then as of a sign of love, like a hardship of like what love is, because like I said, when you're killing an animal for for food and shelter, are you killing that animal with like processing, like, oh, you're doing a violent thing, but you're doing it for the intention of love for your family, because you want to feed your family.
Well, I would argue that it's actually more ethical to hunt than it is like with the factory farming, because I feel like there's a kind of respect, and it's more of an in nature, like animals hunt each other. That's different than like keeping an animal in like a cage. I know that's a little off topic to what we're talking about, but like still,
yeah, just to relate it, like, in this day and age, because now animals like are in cages, and it's interesting where they come from.
So are you saying that maybe the reason they didn't look at the abuse was a sort of like it was just something they didn't want to process, or they loved the family member, that they didn't want to see them in that way? Maybe they didn't want to see them in the way as the person, like they had a different image of them, like this was a person they loved. They didn't want to process that they could do something terrible like this, kind of.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely do feel that, especially from my birth giver, like my mom. She definitely, I feel that she saw the experience in that form, because it was from someone that is love. But they, they did something not so loving.
And why do you think, what do you think gets people to like do that? Like, what is it? Just where does that come from? Like that people even feel like how could someone do that to someone? So especially someone in their own family.
Right. Perhaps it was to them they didn't feel love or they didn't feel seen, so they had to take an action in order for them to perhaps have control, like of themselves. So they wanted to project that, and that's what that's what I feel that that's why it occurred.
And how have you come to terms with that? Like, how have you come with more peace with that? I know you were talking to me about how like some of the spiritual practice you do has helped you kind of cope with some of the trauma from that. And
right, like breath work is definitely like one of, I would say, like my meditation. I used to like meditate for like maybe 4 to 5 hours every day, and that did leave a deeper understanding of like where my past like is, because I feel like for years like I was still living in the past, but I was still in the present because I was traumatized.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a part of trauma, that it can bring the
like it never leaves, like, and you see it like in other people kind of.
Right, like a cloud, like you see a cloud and you're just seeing, you can see it there, or you can just see it pass. So breath work is like one of those things that just like help me regain a sense of myself and like regain my breath again.
And did it help you, because did you ever have like, I guess, issues maybe trusting new people because of your experience? Like did it take a while to see that like that past experience isn't going to be all your future experiences?
Yeah, it did take for a while. It was really tough to like even pronounce like myself, because I felt like I was in jail, like being in like my house and then being outside, because I did experience a deep level of like being cyberbullied online. And like when you're growing up as a teenager, like all the teenagers are online and they're on the internet, and then myself, I experienced like being online but with fear.
Why did they? What was the reason they cyberbullied?
It was blackmailing.
Was it related to the incident you talked about?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was exposure that occurred.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and this was like a quote unquote like best friend that I had. So that was even like
he was siding with the relative or siding with the
well, no, he wasn't really residing. It was just like more of an exposure of what happened to me if I didn't follow their directions.
Wow. Sorry you went through. It's terrible. But did you ever get like any closure about this, or did you get to?
No. I ended up moving. I moved around a lot when I was younger. From like the age of like 6, I started moving a lot until like high school came around, and I just pretty much finished my high school career in Bergen County, and then moved to Philadelphia for art school to regain a sense of myself that I didn't I wanted to find.
And have you like developed a better relationship with your family since? Like, have they come to like more see what happened, or see?
Well, since I've developed more of a deeper relationship with myself, I feel like I understand like my family. I wouldn't say that we speak about like deep conversations, but I definitely do understand like where their minds are and my mind is in a different place, just consciously, because like I live a conscious life and they are not as aware of these things as I am. And I like to just, I do, when I spend time with them, I am with them, but I have to just pay attention on like where my mind goes, because it can go into the past.
So I guess you don't blame them anymore. I guess maybe you thought it was too much of a thing for them to process. Maybe it was too hard for them to
accept.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, family is interesting. There's definitely a lot of things that we learn from our family once we like understand like our own trauma, because I feel like even our parents have their own trauma that they they're in the process of it, whether they know it or not. Because if you're in the process of your own trauma, they can probably see that, because we're our parents in some way or shape or form, besides like us being like our own individual selves. Like
they kind of help mold us into like who we are. Like I feel like with me too, like even like a lot of my literary interest comes from my dad, and like a lot of my like artistic and like performing side I think comes from my mom. I feel like there's definitely a lot of my mother and my dad in me. Like I'm my own person, but like it's definitely
it's influence.
Yeah. And you said that like your spiritual practices kind of helped you come to terms with this. So.
Right, breath work and journaling. Journaling has, I feel like, one of the most spiritual practices that I do, and I've been doing it for a long time.
So journaling, like I've done a bit of journaling. It's just kind of like getting it all out, right? Like kind of just putting it, and then you put it in perspective and you see patterns. Like, is it like thoughts you have throughout the day, or is it like things that happen to you throughout the day?
Right, it's all of it. It's things that do happen throughout the day, people that I meet. I had a journal one time that I wrote down a bunch of questions, and it was specifically just questions, like just like who, what, where type questions. And if I met someone, I would ask them those questions, and they would give me their answer, and I would just listen to, how they would answer the question.
So you wanted to kind of understand other people and like what they've been through as a way to kind of put
like
your experiences in perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said that. So like, how did your spiritual beliefs develop? Because I know that's like a lot of like what you do now is like a Reiki. And like it's spiritual,
yes, and like energy cleansing. I feel like a lot of my teenage years, I was in a Jehovah's Witness, and specifically my grandparents were the ones who did a lot of the influence to that religion, like to me. Going to church with them and actually bring a preacher of the Jehovah's Witness community. I had a moment where I basically asked myself, like, is this what I want to do? Is this who I want to be? Like, do I want to be a Jehovah's Witness, or do I want to be Melanie? And like, I was athletic in high school, so I always ran. I ran cross country and track for all of my high school career, but that, even still being in the religion, I still completed my sports. But then I had the question, I was like, do I want to be a full-time like Jehovah's Witness, like actually like going there every day like my grandparents did? And the answer was no. I didn't want to just do that for the rest of my life. I wanted to explore myself more. So religion had to do a lot of the influences like of my spiritual awakening.
You were getting, because like you said that like your heritage is like the Inca and Mayan tribe in Peru, and that I guess your family became Jehovah's Witness, and like you tried to, and you said I guess you ended up trying to explore more of like getting more to your roots and everything. Yeah,
because I feel it's important to go within your roots because you have a deeper sense of where they started from. And my family's roots is from Peru. And my mother and my father weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, but it was mainly my grandparents who were witnesses. And they still are. But I still love them. You know, they might see me differently a little bit now because I don't do their practices. I have my own practices, but
it's more of like a place of concern, maybe. Like they're concerned, like, because like I guess like their view is like if you don't follow their religion, like you're gonna go to hell. So maybe I guess it's more of like a place of like concern and care, but like is the way you see it, like more than like they still care about you, but like they're just more like they're worried. Like
I feel like you know, I talk to my grandma about the things that I do very openly, and whether, you know, it's her choice to make that decision, whether she wants to look at it as a way of being concerned that I'm not in this religion anymore. But I do remember, you know, how they would like do their service.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a different type of service to pronounce to my family, the world, and myself. So I feel like they I don't really think they see it as concern. They just have a different understanding of like where I am right now. They probably did see this coming too, that I was gonna evolve and not be, you know, just in their circle.
Because it never resonated with you, I guess.
No, they from a young age, like I was always like very free. Like I always made, if I wanted to go outside, like I would go outside. I wouldn't ask for permission. You know, as
is that a thing in Jehovah's Witness? They say you can't go outside, or is like a lot of rules?
Well, they do have certain rules that the members have to follow. But you know, I grew up in 3 different religions, so it was
So it's Jehovah's Witness. Did you? But like your family kind of distanced itself from like the old, like the Inca and Mayan traditions they were talking about. Like you kind of found that more on your own, or was there other?
I discovered it on my own, but they were the ones who introduced it.
Did you like find other people to connect with that like were of the same heritage, and that's how you learned about it, or?
Yeah, like connecting to my like aunts and uncles like from Peru, like actually like going there and like physically like, you know, we go to like Cusco or we go to La Rima, which are like certain cities that like my parents grew up in, and they would just show me like, you know, this is where your mom came and this is where your dad came from, and you know, just having like conversations about like nature and, you know, like our culture.
Yeah, I've recently been like finding ways to connect with like my heritage, because like my mother's side's Jewish, my dad's like more German, and there's like a little bit of Cherokee there, but like mainly German, and like my mother's like Russian and Lithuanian Jewish. But like the Judeo-Christian religions like never resonated with me, like the idea of like a God in the sky who's like dictating things, and like I just like I never really related to that, and I never really related to like the atheist perspective either, that there's nothing and it's all science. So like I've always kind of been somewhere in between, where like they're like I'm a spiritual person, and I think that like everything's kind of connected, and like maybe there's like a divine within us, but I also don't believe in the traditional concept of a God, which is just like a person that's like dictating things to us. But like I kind of, and I started exploring different religions, and I found things that resonated with me, like in Hinduism talk about like the Atman, like the higher self beyond the self, and like Taoism. Like my dad actually, like I wasn't raised any like official religion. My dad did tell me like about Taoism, and that kind of like resonated with me the most. Just kind of like there's this path you're following, and like how everything's connected, and there's synchronicities that kind of guide you on your way. And but like as I was exploring these religions, like I never really looked at Judaism, because like the traditional or like the orthodox concept of Judaism didn't really resonate with me for a lot of reasons. Like it was very rigid, it was very like controlling. But then like with Islam, I looked into the Sufis, like Rumi and Hafiz. Like they weren't really traditional Muslims, but like they viewed God as more of like an abstract concept, like how we're all connected, like the mystical. I've always related to like the mystical view of religion, because it's more of like it's not like a literal interpretation of it. It's more of like I guess like if you use it more like allegories, like it's inspired, like the religion is inspired by like a higher plane of consciousness, but it's not like, oh, God dropped it out of the sky. So like the mystical thing is like sort of like the divine with everything. And like Neville Goddard helped me appreciate that about like Christianity. And like I read a little bit of Maestro, but like then I was like, I should explore my roots more. And I know there's the Kabbalah, which is like the Jewish mysticism. So I started exploring that more. And like there's a lot, like I'm reading this book about so it's like Zohar. It's like a book on the Kabbalah, and there's a lot. The thing that resonated with me a lot was like talking about like the journey of Abraham from his home. Is like it's really a symbol from like, it's not literally about like the symbol of like Abraham from like his homeland. It's more about like a spiritual journey, an inner journey of getting out of his comfort zone, getting out like that just really like resonated with me. So like I've been finding some of the I've been appreciating a lot of like the mystical interpretations of Judaism and everything.
That's really cool. I feel like I can also relate to it, even though I don't know much about it, but I've definitely been getting out of my comfort zone and stepping into like the uncomfortableness of whatever I'm, uncomfortable with, but I'm stepping into it, and it feels really good. Because do you feel like Taoism, when your dad was talking to you about it, do you feel like you had a sense of like remembering?
Remembering like
when he was first speaking to you about it, right? Like giving you an introduction on what Taoism is, do you feel like those are things that you've already heard before? That's why you...
It was kind of like making sense of stuff like I already understood.
That you really like naturally understood.
Yeah.
Right. So there was like a sense of like remembering, because these were just like memorable like sentences.
Mm-hmm. Did you find that with like when you went to explore like more your indigenous roots, and when you talk to these relatives, like...
I feel like Jehovah's Witness actually taught me a lot about myself, despite of it being the religion that it is, because personally I view it as not as that, but it gave me a sense of who I am now. And I also grew up in being Korean Christian from the age of like 6 to like 10, and then that's when my grandparents introduced me to Jehovah's Witness, and I decided to just jump into that religion to see what was it about. It actually saved my grandmother's life. So that's was one of the reasons that I wanted to step into it.
Well, she was like in a bad spot, and that like gave her hope?
She was in an extremely bad spot, very like suicidal, like state, and she actually got a knock on the door, and that's who they were. It was
it was a similar thing with my aunt and Christianity, because I know Jehovah's Witness, I guess it's kind of like a branch of it's Christianity in a way, I guess. But like my aunt, like she was thrown into a nursing home. She was like, I forget how old she was. She was very young, like a kid, and she like had no hope. Like she found like hope and faith and like meaning in Christianity in her faith, because like she spent her whole life from when she was young. I think like 5, or I'm not sure how young she was, and like that's like what gave her meaning. That's what gave her. And then she kind of like was helpful and like always trying to look out for other people in the nursing home, even though like she was just in her whole life. And like I think it was because of polio, like she was crippled, and like her dad just kind of threw the same dad like that my father had trouble with, like he kind of threw her into the nursing home. And
do you feel like she still has that, or
well, I mean, she's rest in peace. She passed away not too long ago, but I think that did kind of give her a peace like till the end. And I remember I only talked to her a few times. I know my dad like got back in touch with her and everything, but when I did talk to her, she did sound very like at peace with everything.
Right. So she's resting in peace.
Yeah,
as my grandmother is too. but not the Jehovah's Witness. That's on my dad's side, who's Jehovah's Witness. My mom's mom was Catholic.
Okay. But like you never really fully believe. Did you think it was like too rigid or like too controlling in a way? Like that's always been my thing.
The
yeah.
witnesses.
Yeah.
It was there. That was another part that itched me. Was the fact that it was it was controlling. I had to wear specific outfits to the services. I remember only having like a couple dresses that I had to choose from, and that was one of the parts that didn't get me to go more, is because I didn't want to be controlled. And I told my grandma I wanted to still continue to do the things that I like, and running was one of the things that I really enjoy. And she couldn't stop me. I was a very free-minded individual since I was very young. Despite of me even still being in these religions, I was still having all these questions in my head about what was being said and brought to me.
Yeah, so that's been my issue with the traditional religious view a lot. Is it kind of denies natural things, like that I think are just part of human nature, like natural desires and everything, and even certain ways people interpret Buddhism can be a bit Buddhism resonates with me more than other religions, but I think you need to be human and have vices and have experience. I feel kind of that in a way that kind of builds your character, that kind of builds who you are, and I think that I do believe in a higher I think it's more like a higher plane, we get in touch with that higher plane of intelligence, and that's what the religious texts are based off of. It's not an actual deity dropping it out of the sky, but I think that higher intelligence just wants us to be happy and be good to each other. I don't know why it would have rules beyond that. It's okay, oh, there's a gay couple, why would an all-knowing being this in charge of the whole universe give a shit that two people of the same sex are having sex? He's just he has this being is it has the whole mentality of the whole universe. It's oh, two people who are the same sex had sex. Out of these billions of people and all this whole universe, I'm gonna give a shit about that. That's a very small-minded all-knowing entity. Fuck that God, if that's what he thinks. I'm sorry, but it's that's a really small-minded asshole for to be an all-knowing being, Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel God wants us to be open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's people being rigid. It's I don't want to. That God is boring as fuck. Honestly, it's he's saying all these rules and
same
stuff.
flavor.
Yeah, exactly. And if I might have offended some people, I don't give a shit. Because it's that's a stupid belief. I'm sorry. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it could.
It is. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, exactly. And so what did you learn? Now we're going to ask, what did you learn when you started exploring more the spirituality and the indigenous, as far as the, you said Mayan and Inca. Yeah.
To put it in 3 words, I had to really let go and start listening. Listening to nature and what is it trying to show me and tell me. And I had to continuously ask certain questions to myself and my past, present, future self, and listen to the answers of what nature is speaking to me. And Peruvians, we're very connected to nature, specifically trees, and trees have a special place in our culture. We it just has a sense of home to us, and we have to protect our trees, because those where our roots are in, and we're just very protective of who we are. And I think that's important. I feel we have to protect ourselves. It's a way to keep us safe, and also having attention of who is in our surroundings, because that's also another
reading people, kind of seeing.
No, just being aware of I'm just speaking in general, as a nation of Peruvians, like we like to see like who is in our peripherals, because we're, like I said, we're protective people of our roots. We care so much about who we are and what we stand for, that like if someone tries to, you know, tackle us, we're gonna defend ourselves. And that's just how I was raised by my mom. Like, she's very protective, and I feel like I can understand why she is that way.
Yeah, and that kind of, I guess that kind of relates to, in a way, the mindfulness, kind of like being in the present. And that's I know, like, from people who like take martial arts and everything, like that's the thing they like about it, kind of like the aware of your surroundings, the present, and then you're ready to protect yourself. Okay, yeah.
Right, you're ready to engage what's right in front of you.
Yeah, I'm just curious. What is your view about deer? Because I feel like I think I mentioned, because I feel like I have a kind of like a connection with them. Like I remember I was like in a bad spot like not too long ago. I was really like depressed, and I'm like, what's the point of anything? And then this deer, she looked at me like and was like wagging her tail, and it was kind of like telling me like everything's gonna be okay. Like just trust your path. Like I feel like there's a significance with me and deer. I'm just curious, like, what your view is.
I feel like deers, they are a sign of compassion when it comes to a very, like, you know, overlapping state with how we're processing what life is in the moment. And whenever I see a deer, she just brings me back to compassion. Like, I have to have compassion on where I am and like where I'm going, because despite of how fast or how slow I'm going, I'm still gonna get there. And that's what deers remind me of compassion, of the path.
Yeah, I definitely got that vibe.
You know, because like even like looking at your poster with
the deer on the motorcycle over there, yeah.
Right. Right, like she's literally like she's still going. Like, despite if she's not, you know, she's riding there, but she's still going, and she's probably still having compassion for where she's going to go to.
Yeah, I like that picture of, I guess he's a buck. I guess that would be that's the male.
The male deer.
Yeah. But like, because like, I feel like it's kind of like representing like what I'm like trying to, like, being compassionate and being caring, yet being strong and centered at the same time. Like combining those two. Like, I feel like that's like the ideal way to be. Even when I was reading about like the Kabbalah, like the Jewish mysticism, it was talking about like strength, like there's like the different lights of God, like and one of them was like it was like balance, strength, and kindness. Like those were three they were talking about. Like that's definitely something I'm trying to like embody too. Like, yeah.
Yeah, deer spirit.
Oh yeah, the deer man.
Beautiful. Yeah, but I was actually like, I asked Tim on the way here, oh, do you see any deers?
Oh, did I mention the deer thing to you or before this, or
maybe like briefly?
Yeah.
Not.
What made you think of deer? That's interesting.
I started seeing a lot of trees, and I feel like they enjoy.
That's interesting, because like I have that connection with deer, and you're on the way here, you're thinking of the deer. That's interesting. Yeah.
This is great.
This is great. It's really great. Yeah. And we got Grogu. We got the shrine of, like, if they're listening, they can't see, but there's like all these deities. There's Buddha, Ganesh, Lakshmi, Kali, and then we got Grogu here. I remember you're a big Star Wars fan. That it's like, yeah. I was actually this is one thing I thought of, is kind of like how Anakin Skywalker or like Darth Vader is kind of a symbol of like how people can be stuck in like a dark place because of like the trauma of their past or like things they've been through, and then sometimes it takes like, you don't realize like there's a Luke in the future that can bring you back from that dark side. Like I feel like he's an interesting allegory for that.
Yeah, have you seen the latest one?
Oh, the Andor?
Yeah.
I didn't watch Andor. Is it really good? Like I heard good that, yeah.
My friend did say, he was like, no, you gotta watch it. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah, light and darkness. What do you think of light and darkness?
I think that they kind of like need each other to balance each other out. Like, you know, it's like the yin and yang, like Taoism Tassa. It's like you kind of need, because you can't really have one without the other. It's kind of like you need the darkness for the light to have its meaning too, and it's kind of like they balance each other out. You know, it's.
Right. Do you feel like trauma is a sense of darkness that can be brought into light?
In a way, because like, if it wasn't for my dad's trauma, I wouldn't even be here. He wouldn't have never moved out of Nebraska. He didn't, with his childhood was so traumatic, he left and he met my mother, and like, that's only because of that. So it's like something good came out of it.
Yeah, you.
Yeah. And my sister, yeah. And,
Yes, and your siblings.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely do feel like there's a beauty to trauma. And with being more grateful for it, we get to really see the lessons of what it's actually trying to show us.
Exactly, yeah. So, okay.
I've experienced trauma since the day I was born. But, yeah, I'm premature. I was born at 5 months.
Oh, wow.
And I was stuck to machines actually kept me alive. So I do have scars.
You know, I had a kind of like a birth like that where I was like
C-section?
Not C-section, but like the umbilical cord, I think it was like wrapped around my neck. I was like, they thought I was gonna die when I was born, but then they knew I was okay when I urinated all over the nurse like that. I mean, that was like she wasn't a big fan of that, but she was like, oh yeah, the baby's okay. I gotta clean this off, but like, hey, the baby's okay. But like that might have like, because you know they talk about like.
Come on, Sean, you weren't scared of showing your roots.
No, I don't. No, I just put it all.
Just embrace it.
Yeah, yeah. But there is a possibility because like I had certain. I mean, I talked about this other episodes like how like that might have gave me some like issues like where I developed a little slower in certain areas than some of my peers, but that kind of like made me who I am too. So even if that was, I don't really mind that either. So
yeah, no, I definitely do relate in certain forms because I feel like specifically, I always look at my hands a lot because they're quite small compared to other people that I've held hands with. But it's like I feel like my hands are like in a way like oddly small, but like to me they're like really unique. But to other people, they're like, whoa, like your hands are like too small. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what is too small and like what is too big?
Yeah, and who are those like dumbasses like focusing on people's hands anyway? Like, like I don't know. Like those sound like real like idiots. Like you're just talking to like what they're just looking at your hands like, oh, your hands are so small. Like I don't know. Like you should tell them to like get a life. It's like they're judging you for your hand size. It's like I don't know.
Look at their own
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like what are you doing here? Like you big fingered motherfucker. Like talking about my small hands here. It's like yeah. Yeah. But I guess, I mean, this has been a pretty good chat. Do you have any final thoughts or things you'd like to say?
Yeah, I feel like no matter how the world looks at you, you have to always embrace yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah, embrace your uniqueness.
And I know this is a fictional character, but Tyrion Lannister says to Jon Snow, he says, never forget who you are, the rest of the world won't. Like wear it like armor and then no one can no one can hurt you. I like that a lot. He says it in the book and the show. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. I'm glad he said it in both, ways.
It's definitely. Yeah. We got Peter Dinklage and we got the written character saying it. So. So like is there a place like where people can keep updated with like some of the stuff you do and everything?
Yeah, no, definitely. Social media is like the first. I always, who doesn't have social media at this point? If you don't have Instagram, well, definitely get the app. And my name is Mystic Writer with 2 I's, Melanie Flores, and I have all of my links over there to Reiki services. My art is there and my words. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, and
thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, it was a great chat. And if you want to keep updated with future episodes, I'm on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts.
I have Spotify. Beautiful.
Yeah, and also like Instagram. Let's talk about the deep stuff, or just look up Sean Kneese, SeanKneese. I posted it all there.
Yeah.
And Venmo, SEAN. If you want to donate to the show, it's at SEAN-KNEESE, or Zelle, and PayPal is SKNEESE1989 at gmail.com. I'm kind of like writing it out here with my finger on the imaginary like chalkboard, but like you can't see it in the audio, but in the video you can. But yeah, anyway, that's about it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one. That was amazing.
That really was.
Yeah,
that
it's
was
a perfect thing. It, like, yeah, it mixed like the humor and like also like the, but also like the serious and like it's great.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
Harry, what do you think?
I think he passed that.
Here.
46 minutes.
Go Harrison.